One of the things that I hadn't been exposed to before this was the idea that ASL as a native language would be preferable to a cochlear implant. And I remember seeing a story of parents who didn't want to have their baby or young child have the cochlear implant. And I'm gonna be honest, when I heard this story at first, I was kind of angry. Why wouldn't you want your child to be able to hear? And I didn't understand why would you be doing that? And so for someone that hears that, like myself, help me understand why why it's complicated, why it's a complicated question to use these devices and to choose not to use the most modern technology to try to assist the hearing capability of somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing.
There's a lot there. There's a lot of politics involved in that. And so I'm here to say what I have observed in my personal opinion, just to make that clear.
Sure.
ASL saved my life, and I am data. I'm a real deaf person who grew up deaf, and I'm 53.75 years old. And the accumulation of all my experiences out there, I've seen what is best for deaf children, and audiologists and doctors need to give these options, and those include sign language. Deaf people are not broken. Deaf people don't need to be fixed. You know, you can't fix a deaf person. People are still of that old way of thinking, and they think a cochlear implant will solve 100% of these communication problems and breakdowns. That's the old way of thinking that needs to be pushed aside. It's much more important that these kids have the right to choose their own identity and choose whether they want a cochlear implant or not, because they need to find their own identities. I've heard so many stories out there that cochlear implants are not always successful. It really just depends on the individual. There's not a standard for every person. It depends on your level of hearing loss. Myself, I'm completely deaf at 120 decibels in one ear, 90 in the other. Cochlear implant would not help me. Even at 50 decibels, I wouldn't be able to hear. So if someone maybe could gain about 50% hearing, maybe there would be a benefit there. But it's so important that not to ignore ASL. And make sure that these kids have access to that language. If they want a cochlear implant, make sure you don't neglect ASL as a part of their educational plan. And that way they have time to find their own identity when they grow up. And sometimes there might be a little bit of residual hearing after surgery. They'll damage any residual hearing during that surgery. You can't get that hearing back. And there are quite a number of risks to that cochlear implant surgery. I've met several people who were half paralyzed in their face after there was a mishap in the cochlear implant surgery. I love playing sports. And as a kid, I loved to play sports. A lot of kids who have cochlear implants cannot play sports because they get extreme headaches. And sometimes you have to replace it and clean it and continue speech therapy. And there's a lot of costs and emotional costs for these kids. But sign language is priceless. It's easy to learn. It's online. You can socialize with friends. Cochlear implants, you know, there's a lot behind it. There's big business and big companies and a lot of manipulation going on of parents. And so it costs $100,000, $50,000. All the insurance companies support it because of the profits. So they choose to ignore and marginalize ASL. So today we're still fighting to make sure that there's equal access to ASL for these deaf kids. So these deaf kids can have a choice and build an identity. There should be a marriage between cochlear implants and ASL, but there's so much controversy. In Sacramento, there's a program that was focused on cochlear implants. And so it's all this literature for parents about cochlear implants. And at the very end in small print, it says ASL. And so, hey, ASL needs to be considered as an equal. So we've had so much controversy. So far, I've seen a number of states. There's about 22 states who have passed this Lead K law for deaf children to have the option to give them the right to learn ASL. And so, yes, it's a complicated issue and an emotional issue, but hey, I'm deaf. I'm fine. Why should I fix myself to fit outside the outside world and struggle doing that? This is who I am. And the problem is how the outside world perceives me and how many people are willing to learn our language and our culture.